Welcome to the SARE Ladies Podcast, the sister brand of Subtle Asian Real Estate, where our mission is to get more people that look like us participating in the real estate industry. We invite experts to not just talk about real estate, but also about our unique identity as Asian women and the cultural values that shape who we are as investors. I'm Anita Wong.
And I'm Tiffany Lee. We're both real estate agents and investors based in the Bay Area and New York City. Whether you're a seasoned real estate pro or just starting out, there's something for everyone here. So pour yourself a glass of wine or boba tea and join us as we celebrate the achievements and unleash the untapped potential of AAPI women in the real estate industry.
Welcome to the SARE Ladies Podcast.
Now let's get on with the show. But first, a word from one of our fabulous sponsors. Dr. Hua Win and her husband, Dr. Jaime Gonzalez, both optometrists by trade and owners of multiple multi-million-dollar optometry practices in the Dallas area, founded Black Steel Investment Group with a passion to invest to impact. With the foundation forged on three pillars, integrity, community, and legacy, they put their investors at the forefront of everything they do. The couple are both seasoned, full-time, multifamily investors, syndicators, and asset managers who, together with their investors, have invested in over 6,900 units as general and or limited partners in Texas, Arizona, Florida, and the Carolinas, with total assets valued at over $480 million. Juan and Jaime are always working to find new investment opportunities for their investors. The couple enjoys traveling the world for delicious food and interesting cultures with their 8-year-old daughter Athena and have a puppy named Coco Ollie. Now on to the show. Welcome, Pod Squatters, to a brand spanking new episode of SARE Ladies. I'm your host, Tiffany Lee, and with me is my co-host, Anita Wong. Joining us today is my good friend, Derek Sang, aka the Proptech Scout. Say hi, Derek.
Hey, Tiffany. Hey, Anita. Happy to be here.
So I met Derek through the SARE New York City monthly meetups that we host. And if you haven't attended one of our SARE meetups yet and you're in the area, please sign up and you can meet amazing people like Derek. Derek is an absolute badass for as long as I've known him. He is an experienced commercial real estate developer and most recently is the founder of the Proptech Scout, which is a website he built from the ground up that is a growing community dedicated to accelerating technology adoption in real estate by promoting best-in-class PropTech. He's also a consultant for a lot of these PropTech founders. If you haven't checked out his YouTube series before, they are exceptionally insightful and really fun and interesting ways to learn about real estate and now also about PropTech.
Now, what we love about Derek is he is always unafraid to tell the cold hard truths about the founder and what real estate deals are like. Derek has seen a lot of these things happen in real estate development and also startups. And so I think the key to that is his ability to sprint towards the word no. And so in order to find that oh so sweet yes. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And we're super excited. So as someone that works a lot with founders in real estate and in the real estate development world, I think one thing that is common between the two worlds is that you really have to be adjusted to hearing and saying the word no. What is your attitude towards saying no, and what do you think society's problem is with hearing the word no?
Yeah, so when I'm working on a deal, as in like construction starting, it's project management mode, or if I'm seeing startup founders execute their business plan, that's when I hate to hear the word no. And I think both the startup world and the real estate development world has the same underlying trait in common, in that founders and basically entrepreneurs, they want to get to a yes. So if they want something done, they have to find a clear path to it. There's going to be a lot of no's in the way. So it's about having that resilience, not getting discouraged, staying really persistent, believing that there's always going to be a solution, and just adopting and evolving your business plan along the way. So you have to relentlessly find your path to a yes. So on the development side, like I said, I hate hearing the word no, because that means that I got to change my business plan. I got to change my development plan, maybe my schedule, my budget. And anytime any of those things has to be adjusted, then I know I'm going to have to answer to my investors and explain what happened. So usually 90% of the time, it's easier to find out why is it a no And is there anything else I can do to get around it to get to the yes? Because I will look at the end result instead of what is this one roadblock in my way on the path to that result. So that's a mindset that I think pretty much any entrepreneur, not just a developer or a startup founder, will learn over time. Because if you really run your business and stop at every no that you get from your employees or your vendors or whatnot, you're never going to get anything done. And it's one of the most frustrating things to hear, because you're the one with the skin in the game. You have stake in the startup or in the building. And usually the employees don't have that kind of mentality. So like a W-2 will be like, I put in the time, I'm still getting paid. I tried my best. I'm at a no, push it off and just tell my boss that's the situation. Let's do something else. But like as an owner, you never want to hear that. Like no is what kills businesses. It stops all productivity. So like there are certain frameworks that I apply to get around this. And it's about instilling a certain mentality in your team and your employees. And if you've succeeded if they're, instead of coming up to you and saying, no, I couldn't do what you asked, they say, like the first step is no, but that they're about to give you an alternate solution. Or the best trained teams will be like, here's what I did. Like I dealt with a bunch of no's. I don't even want to tell you about how I got here. I did it. Like those are the people who are truly aligned with the stakeholders. So like like I was saying, there's a framework, like doing exercises, asking what if, like that's usually a very powerful phrase for teams to just like imagine the outcome. And if you can get them to at least mentally visualize the result, then that kind of gets them in the same mentality and aligns them to say, okay, like a roadblock is just that. It's a roadblock. Can I sidestep it? So that kind of framework is extremely powerful in training teams and minimizing the amount that you'll hear no on any kind of project management or execution kind of scenario. So this is where you should probably edit out, because I start making noises.
I wanted to make a comment actually, and I like that it's like you're saying like no, but is like sort of the other side. It's like saying yes and to me,
Anita,
like
look at
it's like
This is the
you're
improv
like
Yeah, that's
continuing
even
that
better. It's like
conversation.
going above and beyond.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Ah,
I think also that to me is like a signal of employee like maturity, right? It's like, young, you're just starting out, you're just like, I can't do this. But until you actually learn, kind of like had your feet wet in a company for some time, then you can say this did not work, but here's the other solution or this other path. Doesn't have to be solved all the time, but at least there's other alternative area that we can explore in order to carry this proposal forward.
Yeah,
So,
it's definitely a good habit to develop. It's just thinking instead of strictly like, here's the task, did I do it or not? It's not that binary. Business is never that black and white. It's more like, what is the general vague outcome I need here? Like I can apply metrics to it and measure it, but at the end of the day, like you're probably aiming for a certain customer experience, give or take. And so finding alternatives is operating in that fuzzy non-binary zone, and just your path is going to be very wobbly, but just getting there is the big struggle, and that's what makes it worth it.
I like that. It's almost like building the plane as you're flying there a little bit. And I love that analogy. And Anita hates it. She's like, every time we're flying the plane, Tiffany, we're building it as we go there. And I'm like, I love it. And you're like, it's so risky.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that a lot in startups, and I hate to hear it in that context, because it means their product is going to fail in a real estate context.
Right. I'm not talking about real estate stuff. I'm talking about other things. But okay, go ahead. Just to be clear. All right.
So I I feel like in real estate, every deal is designed to make you say yes, when oftentimes the project type might not be in your capability to complete. And I think, like, often within deals in my life, where I mean, typically my eyes were bigger than my stomach, which led to a lot of tedious and perhaps unnecessary uphill battles. How do you make an assessment as to what kind of projects are for you specifically or your team, and the ones that are not for you?
Yeah, so that's something that just comes with experience over time. And like, even though I just did a whole rant about how I hate to hear the word no, I did have the caveat that that's in a project management and business execution context. So if you're in the mode of deal vetting, acquisitions, I will be the first one to say no, and I'll be really fast to say it, as Tiffany knows. Like, you can show me 1,000 deals, and 999 of them are going to be no's for me, because I'm I'm in the mode where I'm looking for that deal where I know that I can execute it extremely well, and I have the experience to do it. And this is where it's more actually extends from the same mentality as my previous answer, because it's a no minimization framework. Because everything you do when you're looking for a project and vetting it out, that whole pre-development period is understanding what is going to happen and how you're going to address it. And the less experience you have and the more unknowns you have, the more no's you're going to encounter, because you're going to try things that are just not possible. And then you're going to find it out the hard way when everyone tells you, no, you can't do this. And like, no matter how much you sidestep it, like, you're either going to just get that experience, which you should have had in the first place, and it's going to cost you some money, or you're going to have to get extremely creative to get to wherever you need to go. So yeah, long story short, I picked the deals where there are as few no's as possible. And like, the more deals you do, the more you'll understand that, the faster you'll get to a no. And there's another framework. It's I think it was a quote from Donald Rumsfeld or somebody, but it's bucketing your experience into knowns, and then known unknowns, which is stuff you know about but you don't have the answer to, and then unknown unknowns, which is like, you just don't have experience there and you have no idea what you're about to encounter. Like, you can't even state like what you're going to have to deal with. And if you don't have the experience early on in your career and you're tackling something like massive ground up development, you're going to have a lot of unknown unknowns, and you're going to have a really, really bad time. So that's why you definitely need to like build up that experience in your track record, hopefully with someone who knows what they're doing. And then over time, those unknown unknowns begin to uncover themselves, and they become known unknowns, or best yet, they become knowns. So when I take on a project, like, I know what I know, and then I know what I'm supposed to find out. Those are the known unknowns, and I'm very comfortable. Like, if I do a New York City multifamily deal, I'd say 95% of what happens fits in those two buckets, and there's very little that I don't know about at this point. So the experience has minimized my unknown unknowns, and then it minimizes the number of no's that I get on a deal. But I've also become
I love
extremely
that.
picky.
But I love that so much, because I feel like the biggest part of learning is knowing what you don't know. And I think, like, that's why guru groups exist, right? And it's like, and I think that's why sometimes people don't get a whole lot of out of guru groups. You know, they go in there and they're just like, teach me everything I need to know, but you don't know what you don't know until you begin to like write down those exercises, or perhaps sit down with it and be like, these are the things I don't know about this project. And you know, at least you're creating this list and like, kind of like working your way up, be like, all right, I need to find someone who knows how, like, who can teach me this aspect. And suddenly that list gets shorter and shorter. And I like that so much.
Yeah, and like,
So
the experience actually puts you through the whole gamut of emotions that, like, I get a
right.
lot of students or people who want to get into real estate ask me, what books should I read before I do my first deal? I'm like, you need to do a deal with somebody
Yeah,
else.
right. It's like
Like,
close
you can read
order.
100 books, and you're never going to experience what it's like to miss a deadline or overrun a budget and then have to talk to an investor in a way where they're not going to cut your head off. Like that's not something you can get out of a textbook. You have to live it.
Right.
And then you have,
You do.
once you live it, you'll be like, okay, I never want to do that again. And that builds a bunch of protections. And that's the experience. That's the known knowns, known unknowns. And then that's why I've become a very picky real estate developer. I know what I want to look for.
That's great. And that, I feel a lot of parallels to that, to playing poker, because a lot of the you're folding so many hands because there's going to be so many more junk hands that you get dealt. And then the actual good hands, you have to wait around and to play those correctly, because those are easy to play. You don't want to put yourself in hard decisions. You want to put other people in hard decisions. Right. And
Yep.
so I see a lot of that when you're saying no upfront, because once you commit your chips, you have to feel confident in like all those other yeses. Like it has to go right most of the time once you decide to play the hand. So
yeah,
that's
it's
great.
like, why would I say yes to a bunch of like 2-7 offsuits when and then like, I'm waiting for the pocket kings, pocket aces.
Exactly. I'm gonna play those
Not gonna
hard,
come
and if I
very
lose
often.
with those, that's fine. But I'm not bleeding away chips playing janky hands.
Yeah,
Every single
the
janky hand that comes
probabilities
my
are
way.
just better with a good starting hand.
Exactly. So that's the analogy. Poker tip for
And
everybody.
I think
Play tight.
too,
Tight is right.
and I think too is like, yeah, I think the exposure is key, right? And I think about like how many projects you have to underwrite, and that's why like people are. It's like I think it was like 1 in 100, or when you like actually stumble upon actually good deals, like you have to underwrite at minimum like 100 of them.
Yeah, that sounds
And it's
about
like
right.
because you have to, yeah, sounds about right. So because you have to just keep throwing yourself at the problem, and then you'll begin to find commonalities within those things, find bullshit numbers in those things, and like what numbers are just far too out of reach or like and unrealistic. And so yeah, I like that. And I think that's, I would say, like, forget about reading your books. Like, underwrite me 100, like do 100 deals. I want you to underwrite 100 deals now. And then
Yeah.
call me back in a week. That would probably
Play
be a better
100
use of your
hands.
time.
Play 100
play
hands
100
and then
hands.
show me how you play those hands, and then I'll
Yeah,
tell
yeah.
you if what you're doing right or wrong.
That's why if you're a student, you
Yeah,
got to
I
get
love that.
internships.
Yes.
Exactly.
So, so one thing that we often hear and we suffer from is that it's something that I also hear from the SARE ladies community, is that people are taking too long to get to their yeses or likely no answers. So how do you deal with paralysis by analysis?
Well, I mean, just hearing that phrase already triggers a lot of negative sentiment. Like I get very, very unpleasant to be around when partners or anybody on my team has analysis paralysis, because it's just slowing things down. Like once you're in project management mode, it's just nonstop, foot on the gas. You can't stop. And every single day you're on a project, there's a carry cost. Like the deals I've worked on, every day has cost anywhere from $2,000 to $20,000. So you can't just sit around and make decisions and not go anywhere. So again, it goes back to the experience, fast analysis, fast decision making, being confident in the decisions you make. After you see and experience and execute several times, several hundred times, you're going to know what works and what doesn't. So anytime people have that kind of paralysis analysis, it's more an indication of a lack of experience, not knowing what to do in a certain situation. So it's best to just like try to identify whether people have shortcomings in their experience and just not work with them on on projects where they need to have that experience. It's going to affect everybody's returns.
I kind of I don't know why, but that kind of reminds me of the Top Gun Maverick scene where you're just like, don't think, just do. I just now
Pretty much,
imagining
yeah.
like Derek. Yeah, I don't think, just do.
Derek's like the mean teacher at Top Gun, where he's like, "You guys are the best of the best. There's no room for error." Literally, he's the bald guy at the beginning of Top Gun that yells at everyone.
I hope I don't go bald though.
You have a great head of hair. For you guys listening on the podcast, watch the video component of this.
Yes, I
Derek
still have my hair.
Derek's got a nice coif going on.
Hey, we're going to take a little break, but in the meantime, here's a shameless plug for one of our amazing sponsors. Learn how to invest in commercial real estate the right way. No fluff, just the truth. Retired software engineer turned real estate syndicator Tony Lin is the managing partner of Link Multifamily, where he helps folks invest passively while also teaching aspiring operators the ins and outs of the commercial multifamily space. Here's what one potential investor has to say about Tony's commercial real estate mentorship. Last year, I shadowed Tony on his latest acquisition, a 111-unit Class A property in Dallas, where he showed us exactly how he intended to execute his business plan. It was a great educational experience. Tony Lin and the Link Multifamily team love to share their recipe for success and empower you to do the same. To get in touch with Tony and his team, visit linkmultifamily.com. That's Link, L-I-N-K, Multi, M-U-L-T-I, Family, Family.com. Now on to the show. All right, let's move on. So imagine there might be a lot of parallels in the startup world and then the real estate world as you transition from one to the other. But I guess something that I know that I struggle with are the reality checks, stopping to answer my why am I doing the thing, right? And so I think you consult with your founders as well, and also so I guess how do you check in with yourself and also check in with the founders to gauge whether something fits with their vision for their business and also like your general big picture strategy, I guess, as a developer when you were in that world?
Yeah, so I will have to split this into two major parts because I actually don't see a lot of parallels between startup world and real estate. And I feel like I have to become a totally different person when I'm talking to a tech founder versus people in real estate. The cultures are completely different. The language is totally different, and their business practices are just, there's some underlying similarities, but by and large, like that's a major reason why the two don't mesh well together, and Proptech adoption has so much trouble gaining traction. So as it pertains to your why question, I think that is a very introspective exercise where you really have to understand what your personal strengths are. And again, all of this extends from that whole experience theme I've been talking about. You have to know what you know. You have to put yourself through a lot of these situations so that your unknowns start to disappear. So for the why in real estate, I mean, I always start from a very good user experience, and that's probably where the most similarities are between startups and real estate. Although I haven't seen a lot of people in real estate necessarily use this kind of practice. They'll really start with like money first and then develop what they can. I like to start with the user experience first. So that means in the context of multifamily, how is someone going to live in this space? What is the foot traffic pattern going to be like? How are they going to do their daily routines? What's going to be the most annoying thing about living in this layout? And how can I make the floor plan ideal so that they really, truly love living in this home? So I start with that. I work with the floor plan and I go backwards because I know that if I have a nice layout and it's truly a good differentiated living experience, that people will like it and they're going to want to buy it. And the sales are going to be fairly easy. Like, you guys are both brokers. Like, some apartments just sell themselves because they either have good layout, they have good sunlight. There's so many different factors. And if you think about that when you're looking for a deal, and again, that's why I'm so picky. I look for these things so that there's some of the other things will be a lot easier later on. So if you plan for these things ahead of time, everything else just kind of falls in place. So the financials are really secondary to that. But by and large, the investors are much happier that I think about these things first because they know I'm taking care of them financially by taking care of the customer. So, and then as for the schedule, like that's a different thing. Like, but that goes back to the whole project execution and circles me back to why. So, like, why are you in development? Why are you a startup founder? You have to think about whether this is right for you. And this is like a huge exercise I've been doing with myself for more than 10 years, trying to figure out, like, why am I here on this planet? And like, I'm still kind of wondering, like, am I doing the right thing? Am I following the right career path? And for some people, they answer it very, very early in life. And for me, I had a very strange winding path, and I developed a lot of interesting experiences along the way. So one thing I like to do with founders in the startup world is I ask them, like, what are you the best in the world at? Because this is this is kind of like in real estate development, where if you find a deal that fits in your track record, it's your wheelhouse, you're not going to encounter a lot of no's, it's going to go fairly smooth and you're going to deliver. That's why investors always look for a good track record. In startups, it's very different because you're, by definition, if you're trying to disrupt something, no one's done it before. You're trying to change the way something's done. And so you have to really understand your strengths and ask yourself, is this why I was put on this planet? Am I the best person to do this particular startup? And that's called founder market fit. And if you're building the right product, that's product market fit. So you need a lot of things to click. So going back to that best in the world exercise, I did that on myself, and that's how I ended up founding the Proptech Scout, because I asked myself, what kind of unique experience do I have that nobody else in the world can say they have? Like, that's a great starting point, because if you've done something nobody else has done, you're probably the best in the world at it. Like, nobody else has done it.
Very niche. Just like
yeah. So
Yeah.
the challenge there is you have to find the fewest number of qualifiers so that you can build a business around it. Because if you're like, oh, I can ride a unicycle while drinking milk through my nose, like, you can't build a business around that, but you might be the only one in the planet who can do it. So for me, like, I had a lot of real estate experience. I put Proptech in all of my deals, and I've been doing that for 12 years at this point. And then before that, I was basically a tech founder. I ran an e-commerce company and I sold it. And then I got into real estate. So I have two things where I have very like, the combination of those two things is extremely rare. And then throw in the prop tech, that's extremely rare. And then put it all together, and like, there's even one more aspect. I used to be a strategy consultant, just moonlighting on the side while I was bootstrapping my business. And so put all those four things together, and I asked myself, who in the world has done that? Probably nobody else. So I think I am the best qualified to start a business that combines all four of those things. And the Proptech Scout is exactly that. I consult Proptech founders on how to run their businesses, how to strategize, reach their customers. And it's set up kind of like an e-commerce site where real estate stakeholders can shop around looking for Proptech solutions for their properties. So I don't really have any competition. I have some competition, but they're not operating in the same space. And I recognize that, because I was like, this is what I do. This is what I can do better than most, if not everybody in the world. And like, that's why I'm probably the only one doing it. So that's what I'm building a business around.
That's so cool. Have you guys ever seen that Venn diagram thing? That Japanese thing is like ikigai or something. It's like the intersection of all the things that, like, your passion,
Yes.
what will make you money. Oh, I forgot what the third one was. And then right smack in the middle is Derek's Proptech Scout. That's
Yeah.
his calling.
Pretty much. And so, like, everyone should seek their ikigai. Not everyone can achieve it. Like, and even for me, it's like, I don't necessarily have fun doing these things, but I do recognize I can do these things better than the average person or most people. So that's what I've settled on for now. We'll see how it goes.
Yes. It's what you're good at, what you can be paid for, and what the world needs. And then
Right.
that becomes your passion, your mission, your profession, and your vocation. And then right smack in the middle is the ikigai. Oh, it's four things. It's not three things. It's a Venn diagram of four things. Okay.
Yep.
So that's what that is. That's the name of this episode. Derek saying ikigai, don't be a real estate developer. All right. So let's take this a few steps back, right? Because this is an Asian American podcast, Asian American millennial podcast. So let's bring it to that. I found, for me, saying no could be a confusing thing growing up in Asian culture, especially in Chinese culture. It could be considered rude, right? And the right way to say no is by expressing some sort of lacking or embarrassment as this like roundabout exaggerated way of saying no that I think, doesn't jive well in like American culture. They just don't understand why you wouldn't just blatantly say no to things. Do you feel that your Asian upbringing influenced the way you say no? And did you feel like you had to learn or unlearn anything within these all these years behind you of doing all these different businesses?
Yeah, for sure. And I think you've caught me at a time in my life where I've already figured out how to just flat out say no. So like when you show me a deal,
Yeah.
I look at it, I'm like, no, I don't follow it up with anything. I just say no. And that took me a long time to get to it. And I keep saying it, it comes with the experience. But before you met me, I did struggle with it. And I think that it does largely come from uh, the Asian American upbringing because when you do say no like that, you set yourself up for the potential for conflict. And that's like the antithesis of the Asian upbringing. You want to just keep your head down and not bother anybody, just keep chugging along. And it's like a whole generational mentality where you want to pay it forward and just everyone takes one or two steps forward each generation, and then you just build wealth over time. And it's not about just like disrupting suddenly everything around you and saying that we deserve this, we deserve that. Like it's never really been like that. I think we're seeing a little bit of a cultural shift these days with a lot more Asian American activism, but like we've got an entire generation that was brought up that way, where it's like if you say no or if somebody says no to you, you might trigger some PTSD because like if if you've been if you've been raised to just like get really good grades all the time and follow instructions, you're always just asking for approval. You're looking for yeses nonstop. And no is just like so traumatizing to hear. So you don't want to do that to anybody else. And that's why like no is so difficult to say for us. Like, and I think Asians more than most will give the no but because they don't want to have that conflict. Um, but I've seen that in real estate, sometimes you just have to embrace that conflict and just dive into it head first because that's how you're going to solve the problems. So I've kind of un-Asianed myself in that respect because I had no other choice but to just deal with these issues by saying no.
Yep. Setting boundaries. A foreign concept in Asian families. Boundaries. So here's our last question. Something I find that I struggle with is shiny object syndrome. And I feel that sometimes perhaps it's because I get bored by things very easily, is that it's really hard for me to say no for just because I might feel like I have a fear of missing out, right? I might have FOMO. So how do you figure out very quickly if something is worth your time or not? And I think you touched on this in this conversation earlier already, but do you still have shiny object syndrome when you meet new prop tech founders? You're just like, oh, this could be really interesting, or do you just jump right into like, I'm going to tell you all the reasons why this isn't going to work? Because I know you,
definitely
Derek,
the latter.
you.
I mean, these days, most of my calls, they have a very structured format. When I first meet a founder, I'm like, you tell me about yourself, I'll tell you about myself. I'll see what I can do to help you. And as they tell me about their businesses, chances are like I've encountered something in their segment, I've used something similar to their product. And a lot of the times I understand their segment better than they do, especially if they don't come from real estate. And so I do feel very confident in that position because like, yeah, especially I hop on the call and they're like, I don't have a real estate background. I'm a software engineer. And I do my little eye roll and I start explaining what happens from the customer's perspective. And I do tend to get a little bit condescending and rude about it, but it's because I have been wronged as a customer in Proptech several times, and it really affected my valuations. This is probably why my whole career has been traumatized in the first place. But so yeah, at this point, I don't have shiny object syndrome. I don't get the FOMO, but I definitely had it when I was younger. I think that's why I have so much weird experience. I was like, well, I want to start a retail store. And then I want to be a strategy consultant. And like, I didn't even mention it on my resume, but I was like, I was a violin teacher as well. Like,
What?
where does that fit into all that?
This is the surprise in this podcast. I didn't know you were a violin teacher ever.
I did all three of those things at the same time because I didn't want to let anything go. I was like, here's an opportunity to do something. So like,
I love
so
that.
I
that
just
you call it
accumulated
weird
all this.
experience.
Yeah, because I remember there was a point where I talked to a recruiter and they looked at my resume and they're like, if we need someone who can like build an e-commerce site and teach violin lessons at the same time, we'll let you know. I was like, I probably should not market that experience anymore, so I don't. But yeah, like when you just collect all these experiences, then you'll start to kind of optimize, and it's finding that ikigai, finding something that you love, finding something that you're good at, something that people will pay you for, and you'll start shedding all the stuff that doesn't pay off, and you'll and also sometimes you just need to take a step back and think about it, because definitely when I was younger, I didn't take the time to think. I was just working nonstop, and I was like, I just want to keep making money. And I really literally every waking hour. So I didn't actually take vacations and say, am I doing the right thing? Is this the correct career path? So I only started doing that recently when I wasn't doing any real estate projects and I was deciding whether I should start something else. And that's when I got super introspective, looking at my own experience, looking at what will people actually pay me for that they won't really find anywhere else. So
and and then knowing you and being your friend and talking to you about this for as long as I have, Derek, it's also like, what brings you joy, Derek? What sparks joy? And every time I talk to you about real estate development, there's like, your face just like dies. It's like you're like the light in your eyes.
Yeah, I definitely have a lot of PTSD.
And then when you talk about Proptech, your whole face just beams, and it's like, yeah, you have that introspective moment of like, what makes you happy? What makes Derek happy? And we talk a lot about this, like this mental health aspect of like, after a certain point, I feel like, and we don't talk about this a lot in Asian culture too, is just like this hustle mentality, like go, 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 don't stop. It's just like we're programmed to just work, 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 and then never question like, hey, is this even what I want to do? And if you do start questioning it, your parents are like, shh, quiet that, keep working. It's like silence that voice inside of you.
Yeah, because it's all part of the bigger generational plan.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this is good. Anita, what do you want to say?
Yeah, no, I wanted to touch base on like the weird experience stuff. And I think as like millennials, we are the generation that thinks more about like, what do I really want to do from the 4 jobs of being a doctor, accountant, and like whatever. Like I feel like we always have like every 2 years we have an existential crisis, and for sure we leave our jobs. So, but I'm a subscriber too to like everything is compost. I obviously have shiny object syndrome, but I also believe that everything is compost. Everything will return back to your personal experience. Like Tiffany would never have thought that her poker experience plays into her podcast career, but sometimes it does come up. And so
every episode there's some poker analogy that comes up. Like, yeah, no, but yeah, or sketch writing or all the comedy writing that now goes into the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, you have as you develop all those things, like you're going to be able to say, I'm a poker player, comedian, real estate developer, broker. How many people can say that?
Exactly. Let's go.
But it's really like how you spin your story, right? You're like, what about being like a poker player really plays into this, or in my investment mind, and like, yeah. So and I think I tell Tiffany all the time, I think comedians is like the hardest job on the planet. Plus, you have to be extremely smart in order to be a comedian. So I would say,
so like I don't get how you do it, Tiffany. You have to be extremely smart, Tiff. How are you the comedian?
No, it's not a jab at Tiffany whatsoever.
I'm teasing.
I do think that like my husband is like, I mean, my husband has one of the personality types. If I have shiny object syndrome, he's like one of the only people I know that has had a single career in his entire life, and he actually loves it, and I'm just like, What
Yeah,
kind
so
of
he found it
alien are
early.
you?
That's great.
Yeah. But he to me, I feel like he teaches me about like the honor of refining your craft, and it's like sticking to something and finding that thing. And then, there may be days where you kind of hate it, but you keep chugging along until you find the part where you actually do like, and pass off the stuff you don't, because there's no perfect job out there, right? So,
Yep.
anywho, I digress.
Fun chat. Love it. So I feel like we touched on everything. Any more bonus questions? I think I'm top. Derek always has so much stuff to add to the conversation, which I love. But Derek, if people want to reach you, there actually are a lot of, so I feel like a big piece of the SARE cohort, a lot of them are like young software engineers that are like trying to create some new stuff. So if they have some crazy real estate business idea, Derek, Proptech business idea, how can they reach you if they want to consult?
So, I mean, I am trying to spread my digital footprint. That's a large part of my current phase of my business plan. So, I mean, the most obvious way is just through LinkedIn. That's where I post most of the professional content, but I also have a YouTube channel. I have a TikTok channel. And then there's my website. It's theproptechscout.com. I'm constantly expanding the functions there, and that's my entire sales funnel. So you can hop on at any time, and you'll hit me no matter where you come in from.
And if they want to contact you and pick your brain about real estate development, I think the consensus is don't.
I mean, I can still give plenty of advice on that front, but I'm going to do it with a grumpy face.
Yeah, that's me. Every time I Facebook message you, I'm like, "Hey, Derek, I have a question." And you're like, "What? Let's go climb."
All right.
Oh yeah, people can come rock climbing with me too.
Yes, that's
in Long Island City.
Derek's the person who told me that rock climbing is the millennial golf. And I tell that to everyone now. Just so I have an excuse
climb every few minutes.
My
It's
meeting.
super tiring, and then you just sit around and talk.
Yeah. Okay, cool. This is awesome. Thanks, Derek.
All right, thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. Here's one last note from our lovely sponsors.
Hey SARE ladies, listeners, Tony the CPA dude here, also your resident SARE tax bro. And with your lovely host, they came up with some great ideas. So Miss Tiffany and Miss Anita here came up with the tax workout plan. So we're gonna help you get cut up on your taxes, also gonna help you cut up on your own body. So just like working out, taxes is a monthly thing. You can't ignore it, otherwise you're gonna fall off the cliff. So with the code SARE ladies, we're gonna give you a nice healthy discount, and we're also gonna give the SARE ladies a kickback just to help support their podcast. I've had a fun time being on their podcast a couple times this year. They've done great. I really wanna see them blow up in 2023. So with your support with this creative tax workout plan and also a workout plan in general, we're gonna help you transform your life in 2023. So mention the code SARE ladies when you talk to me. You can email me at Tony@thecpadude, text me at 928CPA-dude. TikTok's the CPA Dude, website's thecpadude.com, everything's the CPA Dude. So SARE Ladies is your special code here, and let's make this year great.
Thank you for tuning in to the SARE Ladies podcast hosted by Anita Wong and Tiffany Lee. Special thanks to Subtle Asian Real Estate, LLC, our parent company.
If you enjoyed our show, please leave us a review or follow SARE Ladies on Spotify and Instagram @Subtle Real Estate. You can also click on our show notes to subscribe to our newsletters to stay on top of our news and upcoming events. Until next time, Pod Squatters.